2022, and we are live. Okay, so much has happened this past week, and also Walker's senatorial campaign is blowing up in his face. The stories from the Daily Beast came out starting Monday, October 3rd, from the Daily Beast. Pro-life Herschel Walker paid for girlfriend's abortion. And then you had some follow-up stories behind that. At first, he denied even knowing who this woman was. Then by Friday, you had the story from NBC News that dealt with text messages and woman who Herschel Walker in an interview with NBC News Friday, October 7th, he said, "I'm not saying she did or didn't have one," referring to an abortion. He said, "I'm saying I don't know anything about it. About that, I don't know." So now he knows who the woman is, but now he's saying he didn't know that she had an abortion, even though she provided evidence that he wrote a check to her reimbursing her for the abortion, and it was a check for $700 dated September 17th, 2009. So more day after day, day after day, more and more evidence is coming out that he's lying. Day after day, more and more evidence is coming out that he's lying. Now, Republicans, because they're so focused on power, because they're so focused on taking back control of the Senate, most of these Republicans in elected office don't care. They don't care. They are fighting to get control of the Senate because they are fighting for power. And they also, and if Republicans get control of the Senate, then they can also block President Joe Biden's nominations to the federal bench and to the U.S. Supreme Court as well. Okay. So we're going to break down what's transpired this past week, dealing with Herschel Walker also. Okay. Now, back on September 13th, I was on Farajii Muhammad's show, The Culture, on the Black Star Media Network, on Roland Martin's network, the Black Star Media Network. And we talked about Queen Elizabeth II passing away. And we dealt in what we talked about was Black struggle around the globe, Queen Elizabeth II, colonialism and reparations. Okay. So I'm going to share a segment with you from that discussion also. And that is on Roland Martin's YouTube channel and his Facebook page as well. His Facebook page also. So check that out as well. Okay. But I was on Farajii Muhammad's show, and we got into this information, and I also dealt with the map of a map of the world of dealing with the countries that declared their independence from Great Britain. Okay, so I'm gonna share that segment with you as well. We'll talk about President Joe Biden pardoning thousands of people convicted of simple marijuana possession. So it just means that they had a conviction for that. They weren't. It was for possession or usage. It wasn't for drug trafficking. Okay. We'll deal with Herschel Walker. We'll talk, share an excerpt of my conversation on Farajii Muhammad's show dealing with Queen Elizabeth II, Black struggle around the globe, colonialism and reparations. And also we'll talk some about my Wednesday online class. It was on Thursdays, but I'm moving it to Wednesdays. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We had a great class this past week, and in this 8-week online course, we deal with thousands of years of history and what leads to the transatlantic slave trade taking place as well. So you can register for that class at our website, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and we'll give you some information about that as well. Next class is going to be Wednesday, October 13th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Wednesday, October 13th, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay, now on the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct your own behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his or her actions, because the mind can't do it or teach what it doesn't know. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We deal with current events in history, politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, Kemet, to 22828. To sign up for our email newsletter, text the word Kemet, Kemet, to 22828. To sign up for our email newsletter, also visit our website, TheAHNShow.com, TheAHNShow.com. All right, I want to jump into this first story here, and this deals with Biden pardoning those who had convictions, simple convictions, convictions of simple marijuana possession. Okay, there was a good article from the New York Times on this. Biden pardons thousands convicted of marijuana possession under federal law. Biden pardons thousands convicted of marijuana possession under federal law. And also they talked about this on Roland Martin Unfiltered as well. So when we come back from the break, we're going to go to that segment from Roland Martin Unfiltered. But I want to go to this article here from the New York Times. And let me pull this up here. Okay, Biden pardons thousands convicted of marijuana. And let me pull this up here just a second. Okay, so now marijuana is classified as a Schedule I drug. Also, it's in the same category as fentanyl and heroin. President Joe Biden on Thursday pardoned thousands of people convicted of marijuana possession under federal law, and says his administration will review whether marijuana should still be in the same legal category as drugs like heroin, LSD, fentanyl, things like this. Okay, and on the other side of the break, we're going to deal with some of the history of why marijuana became illegal in 1937. As long as white people were using marijuana, it wasn't a problem. Okay. When African Americans start using marijuana, now it becomes a problem. Okay. And it deals with a deep history of racism in this country. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race, which comes out of the ideology of European white supremacy. Okay, you listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 a.m. the Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, back from breaking 4 minutes. Stand by. Back from breaking 4 minutes. Stand by, everybody. Okay, if you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App. Also through PayPal, paypal.me/TheAHNShow. Bathroom break in 3 minutes. Stand by, everybody. Okay, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ AHN show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/. All right, hold on. Let me refresh the screen. Stand by. Bathroom break in 2 minutes. Stand by. Bathroom break in 1 minute. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation. It is Sunday, October 9th, 2022, and we are live. Calling numbers 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. We'll go to the phone lines here in just a minute. I want to go back to this article that I started discussing right before the break. This is from the New York Times from October 6th. Biden pardons thousands convicted of marijuana possession under federal law. Okay. And this is an executive order that he's doing. This is fulfilling another campaign promise. The move presents a fundamental change in America's response to a drug that has been at the center of a clash between culture and policing, for more than half a century. Okay, now, as I said, marijuana is a Schedule I drug as well. It's in the same legal category as heroin, LSD, fentanyl, etc. Now, the pardons will clear everyone convicted on federal charges of simple possession since it became a crime in the 1970s. Officials said full data was not available, but noted that about 6,500 people were convicted of simple possession between 1992 and 2021. Okay, between 1992 and 2021, you had 6,500 people who were convicted of simple possession. Now, this is not counting legal permanent residents. Now, the pardons will also people who were convicted under Washington, D.C. Drug laws. Officials estimated that number to be in the thousands. So you have the 6,500 who were convicted of simple possession between just 1992 and 2021. But then also you have those who were convicted under a Washington, D.C. law. And this is and that's thousands more people. Okay, so as time goes on, we'll find out what the actual numbers are. All right, now the pardons will not apply to people convicted of selling or distributing marijuana. And officials said there are no people now serving time in federal prisons solely for marijuana possession. But the move will help remove obstacles for people trying to get a job, find housing, apply to college, or get federal benefits. So this is going to have a big economic impact, a big favorable economic impact for a lot of people. Okay, this one move right here. Now, once again, this is an example of how elections have consequences. All right, and understanding how politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, palm resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. We're going to clip number one in just a minute here, Giovanni. Then we'll go to the phone lines. Now, President Biden urged governors to follow his lead for people convicted on state charges of simple possession, who vastly outnumber those charged under federal law. So the overwhelming majority of people charged with possessing marijuana or using marijuana at the state level. The majority of control over policing is at the state level because of the 10th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which deals with states' rights. Okay, but this is what Biden can do at the federal level with the powers of the presidency, the executive branch of the government, under the Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution, Article 2 powers that the executive branch has under the U.S. Constitution. Still, the president's actions, which come about a month before the midterm elections and could help energize Democratic supporters, represents a fundamental change in America's response to a drug that has been at the center of a clash between culture and policing for more than half a century. Now let's go to, let me see here. I'm going to cue this up here. There was a video released of President Biden speaking on this issue. It's about a minute, 30 seconds, something like that. And he breaks down the 3 points that he made in this video. So we're going to go to that video. Let's go to the video, Giovanni. Clip number one.
As I said when I ran for president, no one should be in jail just for using or possessing marijuana. It's already legal in many states, and criminal records for marijuana possession have led to needless barriers to employment, to housing, and educational opportunities. And that's before you address the racial disparities around who suffers the consequences. While white and black and brown people use marijuana at similar rates, black and brown people are arrested, prosecuted, and convicted at disproportionately higher rates. So today, I'm taking 3 steps to end this failed approach. First, I'm announcing a pardon for all prior federal offenses for the simple possession of marijuana. There are thousands of people who are convicted for marijuana possession who may be denied employment, housing, or educational opportunities as a result of that conviction. My pardon will remove this burden on them. Second, I'm calling on all governors to do the same for state marijuana possession offenses. Third, the federal government currently classifies marijuana as a Schedule I substance, the same as heroin and LSD, and more serious than fentanyl. Makes no sense. So I'm asking the Secretary of Health and Human Services and the Attorney General to initiate a process to review how marijuana is scheduled under federal law. Even as federal and local regulations of marijuana change, important limitations on trafficking, marketing, and underage sales should stay in place. Too many lives have been upended because of our failed approach to marijuana. It's time that we right these wrongs.
Okay, pause it right there. Okay, so that was President Joe Biden speaking on his executive orders that he's doing. President Biden on marijuana reform. That is from October 7th, 2022. That is at the White House's YouTube channel. Okay, if we go back to this article here briefly, then we'll go to the phone lines. And I want to go to Roland Martin Unfiltered, because Roland spoke with Representative Troy Carter, a member of the Congressional Black Caucus, about this initiative as well. So Biden says sending people to jail for possessing marijuana has upended many lives. Now, we know that the usage rates of African Americans and white Americans when it comes to marijuana are almost identical, but African Americans are almost 4 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession. Okay. Now, President Biden stopped short of calling for complete decriminalization of marijuana, which is something that Congress would have to do. Okay. Now, remember, we talked about this on this show. We talked about the MORE Act a few months ago. The bill was in the House of Representatives. It would decriminalize marijuana at the federal level, the MORE Act. It would expunge marijuana convictions on people's records going back to 1971. Okay. And basically all the Democrats voted for the bill. Only 3 Republicans out of about 215 Republicans voted for the bill. One of them was Sugar Daddy Matt Gaetz, who I refer to as the white R. Kelly. And he probably voted for it because, you know, if you listen to how crazy he sounds like he's high half the time. There was only 3 Republicans that voted to decriminalize marijuana. All right. That was in the House of Representatives. So this is an example of how elections have consequences. You have to see whose policies line up best with your interests and the issues that you care about. And this is why it's important to go to congress.gov. Congress.gov, all these bills, you can read a summary of these bills. If you want to read the full bill, it's there also, but you can at least read a 1-page summary of the bill or 2-page summary of the bill. But most importantly, at congress.gov, it tells you who voted for these bills that you care about and who voted against the bills that you care about. Okay. So if you have a member of the House of Representatives, and there are 435 members of the House of Representatives, if you're a member of the House of Representatives keeps voting for bills that you care about, why the hell would you let them get voted out of office? That doesn't even make sense, because most likely the person that's going to replace them will be of another political party, and they're going to be against most of those bills that you advocate for. If you're 2 members of the U.S. Senate keep voting for bills that you care about and want to become law, why would you let them get voted out of office? That doesn't make sense. So we have to vote people back into office who keep voting for policies that we advocate for and care about. And we have to vote people out of office that keep voting against our best interests. And we have to vote more people in the office whose policy, whose platforms line up with our agenda, who line up with the policies that we care about. Listen to the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. When we come back, we'll go to the phone lines. 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number. If you have a question or comment, we'll be back in a few minutes. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation, Future Radio. All right. I want to go to this article here, then we'll go to the phone lines. We'll go to Carlito on line one. Just 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. Okay. So a few months ago, when this story broke about House Democrats passing a bill to decriminalize marijuana, because the president only has so much power to decriminalize marijuana. That's Congress. It's not a trick to say, oh, he's giving pardons in the simple marijuana possession. He's doing what he can do within the power of the executive branch of the federal government based upon Article 2. Congress has the authority to decriminalize marijuana at the federal level, okay? Not the president. This is from the New York Times. I talked about this here on the show when this story came out, April 1st, 2022. No, this is not an April Fool's joke. You have to do more research. House votes to decriminalize cannabis. House votes to decriminalize cannabis. Democrats, with some Republican support, voted 220 to 204 to remove marijuana from the federal list of controlled substances, moving to catch up to the states. Okay, so 204 Republicans voted no on this measure. The House passed legislation on Friday, and this was right around April 1st. 2022 to decriminalize marijuana at the federal level, as Democrats and only three Republicans banded together to capitalize on the political resonance of legalized cannabis as an issue of economic growth, racial justice, and states' rights. The Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act, also known as the MORE Act, the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act, which passed by a vote of 220 to 204. Go look up this bill at congress.gov. And if you're a member of the House of Representatives, voted against this bill, you should probably want to think about voting them out of office. The MORE Act, which passed by a vote of 220 to 204, is unlikely to secure 60 votes to pass the Senate, especially in this Senate, because it's 50 Republicans, 50 Democrats, which is why you need more Democrats so you can change the filibuster rule so you can get more of these bills passed with less than 60 votes. You can get them passed with 53 votes, 52 votes, what have you, like the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, the MORE Act, the Crown Act, which deals with banning discrimination when it comes to hairstyles, especially African-American hairstyles. Okay. It's unlikely to get 60 votes in the Senate, despite the backing of the Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer of New York. But supporters of marijuana decriminalization, even some Republicans who voted against the Democratic legislation, said on Friday that the vote was a necessary step toward building consensus on something that can become law. The Democrats' bill would remove marijuana from the federal government's list of controlled substances. It would impose an 8% tax on cannabis products. It would allow some convictions on cannabis charges to be expunged and press for sentencing reviews at the federal and state level. It would also make Small Business Administration loans and services available to cannabis businesses while setting standards for them. And one of the reasons why this is so important is it would expunge felony convictions for marijuana possession going back to 1971. Okay. But also, if you decriminalize marijuana, now the marijuana dispensaries, now they can open up bank accounts, because right now marijuana is still illegal at the federal level, The banks are regulated by the FDIC, which is a government entity. So the cannabis dispensaries, the marijuana dispensaries, cannot open up bank accounts. So they have to have safes with thousands of dollars in them. They suffer restrictions because it's illegal at the federal level. So this bill right here would do so much, so many positive things. Now, the Republicans voting for the measure were Sugar Daddy Matt Gaetz, who I call the white R. Kelly, and Brian Mast of Florida. They're both Florida, Matt Gaetz and Brian Mast, and Tom McClintock of California. But other Republicans have signed on to a similar bill by Representative Nancy Mace, Republican of South Carolina, two Democrats, Representatives Henry Cuellar of Texas and Chris Pappas of New Hampshire voted against the legislation on Friday, okay, back in April, all right? They voted against the MORE Act, but almost all the Democrats voted for this bill except two, and only 3 Republicans voted for this bill. Okay, so read this article here from the New York Times. We talked about it on this show back in April when this happened. House votes to decriminalize cannabis. This is from April 1st, 20. Okay, let's go to the phone lines quickly here. Let's go to line 1. We have Carlito on line 1. Welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us where you call it from.
We lost him.
Okay, 313-778-7600 is the calling number if you have a question or comment. Okay, so you just be prepared to hold for a few minutes here because we have a lot of information to get through. All right, now I want to go to this next clip here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on October 6th, which was Thursday, October 6th. Roland spoke with Representative Troy Carter of the member of the House of Representatives and of the Congressional Black Caucus about Biden's pardoning of thousands of people for a simple marijuana possession. Okay, let's go to clip number 2, Giovanni. You should start up at the 11:26 mark.
Congressman Troy Carter, a lot of folks have been talking about this in the last 3 hours since the president made the decision. How significant is this issuing pardons for everyone who's been convicted of simple marijuana possession?
Roland, it's huge. We applaud the president for his action today. It goes a long way to demonstrating that marijuana, while legal in some 38 states in our country, it's in some capacity is legalized. Yet we have thousands of Americans who are saddled with blemishes on their record because of use or possession of marijuana. We know that prosecutions have been disproportionately executed, that communities of Black and brown and yellow have been in the eye of the cone of the storm, if you will. This action will give people in America an opportunity to have that removed, to move forward with their lives. Remember, these are nonviolent. These are not violent actors. These are people that had possession or use of small amounts of marijuana. I think the president is doing the right thing. We met with the White House back in April to talk about this with senior staff in the White House. We followed up with the creation of HRES 8557, which is my bipartisan bill to create a expungement program on the federal level and encourage to join those states that have done it and those local communities that are likewise doing it. It's the right thing to do for all the right reasons, and I applaud the president for his action.
This was one of the campaign promises he made, and it also was an issue that was being championed by Vice President Kamala Harris as well. It was the pressure of activists and others who pushed the president to actually do this. One of the things that we still are facing, you have folks like Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas, who insist that we should be putting more people in prison as opposed to what's happening right now. So you still have forces out there who want to lock people up. There are still individuals who are in prison on the state level, 10, 20, 30 years for simple marijuana possession, costing taxpayers thousands of dollars every year for literally low-level crimes.
Well, I think what you have is you have people who make political hay out of these things, and they use this as scare tactics. Yes, we have a crime problem in America. We have a crime problem that needs to be addressed. But we don't need to continue to build jails and put people in jails for misdemeanors, for things that I'll go back and say again, that in 38 states in our union is legal in some shape or form. So for Tom Cotton or anybody else to try to make this a political football, it's unfortunate. Because if you look at the numbers will clearly support that the beneficiaries of this executive order and hopefully the passage of HRES 8557 clearly will show you that black, white, Democrat, Republican, East, North, South, and West will benefit from this correction. And I call it a correction.
Pause it right there. Pause it right there. Okay, we'll pick this up on the other side of the break. And also, once again, we're going to dispel this myth because apparently some people joined in late and they think this only forgives 6,000 people. That's false. I already dealt with this. It forgives a lot more than 6,000 people. You got to do more research. You listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation of Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Stand by. Back from breaking 4. Kenny Love, cut what check? See, y'all can't come here with this stupid ass nonsense. This is something. You don't read. Cut what check? If you're talking about reparations, name me 10 Republicans in the Senate that are going to vote for reparations. Y'all got to get out of here with this Simple Simon ass nonsense. I'll deal with this dumbass on the when we come back. Don't come here with nonsense because you're going to get embarrassed. I'm telling you right now. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation, the Future Radio. Okay, calling numbers 313-778-7600, 313-778-7600 is the calling number if you have a question or comment. Now, we'll go back to the clip here in just a minute, Giovanni, and when we go back, started up at the 14-minute mark. 1400 started up right there. Okay. Or yeah, should be able to start right there. Okay. Now, a couple of things. One, you had somebody that posted here what we already addressed, and what they're saying is false. It only forgives 6,000 people who have federal convictions, not local and state. Of course, it can't. Of course, it cannot forgive local and state because the president doesn't have the authority to forgive at the state level. The president only has the authority to give a presidential pardon for the federal level. But as we addressed at the beginning of the show, it forgives a lot more than 6,500 people. Okay, how do we know? Well, let's look at the evidence. Let's look at this article once again from the New York Times, October 6, 2022. Biden pardons thousands convicted of marijuana possession under federal law. Okay, so if we go look at the article, it says the pardons will clear everyone convicted of federal charges of simple possession since it became a crime in the 1970s. Since it became a crime in the 1970s. Officials said full data was not available, but noted that about 6,500 people were convicted of simple possession between 1992 and 2021. This is where the 6,000 people are coming. The 6,000 people that people are latching on to and repeating, but don't read. That's only dealing with from 1992 to 2021. But simple possession became a crime in the 1970s. 20 at least about 20 years before 92. Now, it also goes on to say, not counting legal permanent residents. But then it says the pardons will also affect people who were convicted under the District of Columbia drug laws, Washington, D.C. Officials estimated that number to be in the thousands. That's thousands in addition to 6,500, but the 6,500 is for simple possession convictions only between a 20-year period, 1992 to 2021. But simple possession became a crime 20 years before 92 in the 1970s. But as they say here, they don't have the official data at this point. So it's thousands more than 6,000. So I don't know why people just keep repeating stuff that they didn't go research. You can't do that here. This is a different type of show. We deal with facts and evidence. You got to go to somebody else's show that don't read with that nonsense. Okay, I want to go back to the clip from Roland Martin Unfiltered from October. This is from Roland's show. I think it was October 6th, from October 6th, which was the Thursday, October 6th, 2022. He's speaking with Representative Troy Carter, Democrat from Louisiana, member of the Congressional Black Caucus. And members of the Congressional Black Caucus urged Biden also to do this pardon as well. And they're leading the charge to decriminalize marijuana in Congress also. I shared that article with you as well, because we talked about that back in April 2022 when the vote took place in the House of Representatives, and the vote was 220 to 204 to decriminalize marijuana at the federal level, and only only 3 Republicans voted for the bill. Okay, let's go back to this clip, Giovanni, at the 14-minute mark.
Yes, we have a crime problem in America. We have a crime problem that needs to be addressed. But we don't need to continue to build jails and put people in jails for misdemeanors, for things that I'll go back and say again, that in 38 states in our union is legal in some shape or form. So for Tom Cotton or anybody else to try to make this a political football, it's unfortunate. Because if you look at the numbers will clearly support that the beneficiaries of this executive order and hopefully the passage of HRES 8557 clearly will show you that Black, white, Democrat, Republican, East, North, South, and West, will benefit from this correction. And I call it a correction because we know that it has been disproportionately enforced. It has caused havoc in areas that of our community that have been underserved and over-policed. We don't want, by any means, to burden police officers with going after these misdemeanors when they should be free. Those resources should be free to go after hardened criminals, carjackers, rapists, robbers, those people that are wreaking havoc on our communities. People that have misdemeanors for marijuana, they're not in that category. And it's unfortunate that some will try to play that card. But I will tell you that I'm very proud that we have bipartisan support for both my Climb Act and the Expungement Act. My partner in Congress, Representative Rodney Davis, who's a Republican, has joined me as the co-sponsor on the Expungement Act. We're hopeful that we will have a very large group of Republicans and Democrats to join with us as co-authors to send this to the Senate and hopefully to the president for his signature, because the executive order, while very important, and it's a huge step, an executive order can be reversed with the next president. We want to make sure that we memorialize this in law.
The reality is here, by issuing the pardons, can't be reversed by if the next president is not Democratic. That can't be reversed, but certainly
the pardon can't.
Aspect of the executive order.
The pardon, once you've gotten the pardon, you have the pardon. The problem that you have, there may be others out there that are similarly situated. We want to make sure that it's memorialized in law, because that gives us the teeth to make sure that it does not become a political football. Often these things become political footballs, and they become good fodder for the political talking heads, or for people who are trying to push one end of the earth to the other end of the earth. And people should not be caught up in the politics de jour.
Absolutely. Congressman Troy Carter, appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, brother. Always good to be with you. Thank you, brother.
Okay, pause it right there. Okay. All right. So that's you can watch that on Roland Martin's YouTube channel or Facebook page, and also download the Black Star Media app as well. And you can watch me on Roland Martin Unfiltered when I'm on Fridays. All right, because I'm a panelist usually on Fridays, providing historical analysis and political analysis. When we come back from the break, we're going to deal with the racist history of how marijuana became illegal in 1937. How and why marijuana became illegal in 1937. Listen to the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Back from break in 3 minutes. Back from break in 1 minute. Back from break in 1 minute.
(910) AM Superstation, a division of Adele Media. The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 910 AM Superstation or Adele Media. We got the topics, the guests, the opinions, and the facts.
I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the After History Network show. We do recurring events and history and much update what's going on. This is a self-preservation. We have to extinguish the fire of white supremacy to elections have consequences.
Catch it all right here on 9 AM Superstation.
Welcome back to the African History Network show. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. We're in our second hour. Calling numbers 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. Okay, I want to go back quickly here to this article dealing with Biden pardoning thousands convicted of marijuana possession under federal law. Then we're going to deal with the racist history of why marijuana was made illegal in 1937. We're going to go to clip number 3 here in just a second from The Beat with Ari Melber. Giovanni, we're going to clip number 3 in just a minute here. Okay, there's a couple of things I want to go look at here in the article from the New York Times. One is on page, what page is this? Let's see, one is on page 3 that deals with how many states have made marijuana legal. Okay. 19 states that have made it totally legal, and it's about 37 that have made medicinal marijuana legal. And let's see here. Okay, so marijuana is already fully legal in about 19 states, and some other states have relaxed criminal penalties, according to DISA, a large drug testing company that tracks state laws regarding marijuana. It remains fully illegal in a handful of states. The federal government will stop charging anyone with simple possession starting on Thursday, officials said. Okay, so right here, and it's 19 states and the District of Columbia. Marijuana is, let's see, 19 states and the District of Columbia have legalized marijuana for adults over age 21. I'm looking at the article from NBC News. And 37 states and Washington, D.C. 37 states and Washington, D.C. have legalized medical marijuana. 5 states, Arkansas, Maryland, Missouri, North Dakota, and South Dakota, are voting in November whether to legalize marijuana for adults. All right, then we look at the NBC News has an article, Biden to pardon thousands convicted of marijuana possession. Okay, then we have the now also in the piece here from the New York Times, it goes on to talk about the discrepancies between the arrests of African Americans and the arrests of white people. This is on page 4 of the article. It says, while studies show white and black people use marijuana at similar rates. A black person is more than 3 times as likely to be arrested for possession than a white person. Okay. African Americans are almost 4 times as likely to be arrested for possession of marijuana, even though the usage rates of marijuana between white Americans and African Americans are almost the same. Okay. Very similar rates. And this is according to a report from the ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union, that analyzed marijuana arrest data from 2010 to 2018. Now, a vast majority of marijuana arrests fall under the jurisdiction of states, as we already talked about, but the crime has historically represented about a third of nationwide drug possession arrests by state and federal officials. According to preliminary FBI data, more than 170,800 of the roughly 490,000 drug possession arrests in 2021 were related to marijuana possession. Okay, so read the rest of this article here from the New York Times. Biden pardons thousands convicted of marijuana possession under federal law. Okay, I want to go to this clip here from Ari Melber's show, The Beat, on MSNBC, and Ari Melber dealt with Richard Nixon. Now, I did a presentation back in 2016, which dealt with Richard Nixon's war on drugs. Okay, and because I know people always like to talk about the crime bill for some reason, but if you actually study history, you have to go back to June 17th, 1971, when Richard Nixon declared his war on drugs. The war on drugs did not start in 94 with the crime bill. The U.S. prison population quadruples from 1970 to 1993. The crime bill wasn't signed until September 13th, 1994. The U.S. prison population goes from about 300,000 in 1970 to 1.3 million in 1993. How people just skip over that and go to 94, I do not understand this. Okay, but I want to go to this clip here. And this Ari Melber is dealing with Richard Nixon's war on drugs. Let's go to this clip, Giovanni. Clip number 3. Okay. All right. I guess we're getting it queued up. President Biden issues sweeping marijuana pardons after years pushing the war on drugs. It comes as both parties, Republicans and Democrats, are now open to ending parts of the drug war. Ari Melber reports on new calls to decriminalize marijuana after Biden pardons and how the drug war targets the poor and minorities. Do we have the clip ready? Okay.
Oh, give me 1 second. It seems like it's
all right. And after this clip, then I want to get to the some more of this history dealing with why marijuana was made illegal in 1937. And we're going to talk about Harry J. Anslinger. Harry J. Anslinger. You've heard me talk about Harry J. Anslinger before. And Anslinger was the first chair of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. Okay. And Harry J. Anslinger waged a war against marijuana. Okay, we're going to talk about this article, how a racist hate monger masterminded America's war on drugs. Okay, do we have the clip ready?
Not yet. It seems like we're having some difficulty with it.
All right. Okay, let's go to this article here while we try to get the clip queued up. Harry Jacob Anslinger conflated drug use, race, and music to criminalize non-whiteness, and create a prison industrial complex. Now, in 1931, Henry Smith Williams walked into Harry J. Anslinger's Washington, D.C. office to plead for his brother's life. Anslinger and his agents had locked up every drug user they could find, including Williams' brother Edgar. Now, Williams was a doctor. Henry Smith Williams was a doctor and had written extensively on the need for humane treatment of drug addicts. He had spoken vehemently against Anslinger's brutal tactics, but confronted by the man himself, slicked back black hair with a falcon-like visage, a thick neck, and an imposing frame, Henry Smith Williams was suddenly deflated. He half-heartedly made a few points about his brother not deserving such treatment, then he left. After he was out of the door, Anslinger mocked him, calling him hysterical. "Quote unquote, doctors," he said, knowingly, quote, "cannot treat addicts even if they wish to." Now, Anslinger called instead for, quote, tough judges not afraid to throw killer pushers into prison and throw away the key, end quote. Okay. Let's go to this clip here from the Beat with Ari Melber.
And more vicious, more deadly, even than these soul-destroying drugs, is the menace of marijuana.
Marijuana use, harmful as it is in its own right, is often a prelude to the use of cocaine and other drugs.
I have to tell you, I think the problem is not that we're sending innocent people to jail in large numbers. We're not sending enough of the criminals to jail.
This is drugs. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions?
Remember that Reagan era ad? Any questions? Yeah, a few questions. Do all drugs fry the brain like an egg equally? If opioids are more addictive than pot, why are they treated so much more leniently? Is it because opioids are used more by white people and lawmakers who take donations from big corporations, let those corporations make billions of dollars off the opioids? And if pot is so bad, why do so many wealthy people and white people get away with using it without ever having any criminal legal problems, while poor and minorities are charged at higher rates? Well, those are just some questions. There are actually answers. We are also, when possible, in the answers business here in the news. But the answers are disturbing. Consider that it was the disgraced Watergate president, Richard Nixon, who, for suspicious reasons, Nixon later admitted their war on drugs targeted Nixon's two political enemies, quote, the anti-war left and black people. His words, whether to be against the war or black, getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin and criminalizing both heavily. Nixon Dade explained they could disrupt those communities, their meetings, vilify them night or night on the evening news. How about that? If you're watching on the East Coast, it's the early evening. Hi there, this is the evening news. We're not falling into that trap. We're going to follow the facts. It is, of course, illegal for the government to abuse criminal laws to target politicians' opponents or legislate based on their lies. And that's what that Nixon drug war was about. That same aide admitted after the fact. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. Yeah, that's history, but it's also news tonight. It was Nixon who created the DEA. It was Nixon who put marijuana among the most dangerous drugs, that same Schedule 1 list that Biden is now asking be reconsidered by the federal government. And some policies age poorly as we learn more or as times change. But other policies were broken from the start, and that is the war on drugs, according to its own creators, like the Nixon aid I just quoted you.
Okay, pause it right there. Pause it right there. Back it up about a minute. We'll pick this up on the other side of the break. This is why I'm explaining to people who keep wanting to start the war on drugs in 94. You don't understand history. You got to go back to Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon declared his war on drugs June 17th, 1971. This is the type of information we deal with here. We don't deal with that simple Simon as nonsense that you get other places. And we back it up with facts and evidence. Proper documentation ends all conversation. We'll be back in a few minutes. Back from break in 4 minutes. Stand by. Back from break in 2 minutes. Back from break in 1 minute. Okay, who we have here? We've got Maverick. We've got Jervale. I didn't use Google. Jervale, I didn't use Google. I'm citing sources. I ain't citing Google. Okay, we got Mars, Joya, German.
We deal with a number of different topics here on the TheAHNShow Network Show. We do recurring events and history and much, much more. We're going to give you an update on what's going on. This is about self-preservation. We have to extinguish the fire of white supremacy. See, elections have consequences.
Catch it all right here on 910 AM Superstation. 910, the Superstation. Detroit's only African-American talk radio.
Welcome back to the African History Network show. All right. Calling numbers 313. Welcome back to the African History Network show. Calling numbers 313-778-7600, 313-778-7600 if you have a question or comment. Okay, I want to go back to this clip. We're going to start at the 1 minute mark. Giovanni, I want to go back to this clip from The Beat with Ari Melber. He's dealing with the history of the war on drugs. As I have stated numerous times before, even going back to my lecture I did in 2016, dealing with the history of Richard Nixon's war on drugs. The war on drugs didn't start before. Where y'all getting this misinformation? Like, what type of research you're doing? It goes back to June 17th, 1971, and Richard Nixon. Why people don't deal with this, I don't. It just perplexes me. In April of 2016, the cover story for Harper's Magazine, was called "Legalize It All." Legalize It All. The April 2016 issue. The African History Network show we've been on 12 years, when this story came out, I talked about it on this show. In the clip, Ari Melber is talking about John Ehrlichman. John Ehrlichman was Richard Nixon's domestic policy advisor. He ended up going to federal prison. He did about 18 months in federal prison behind the whole Watergate scandal. John Ehrlichman did. We know Nixon didn't go to prison. But in 1994, now this cover story for Harper's Weekly was written by a journalist named Dan Baum. Dan Baum, okay? And it says in the article, it says in 1994, John Ehrlichman, the Watergate co-conspirator, unlocked for me one of the great mysteries of modern American history. How did the United States entangle itself in a policy of drug prohibition that has yielded so much misery and so few good results? Americans have been criminalizing psychoactive substances since San Francisco's anti-opium law of 1875. That was targeting the Chinese men specifically, who were working on the railroads. Because in my lecture I did in 2016, and we got to put that, I have to put that lecture on our new website, TheAHNShow.com, because we have that available. It's on DVD. It deals with how Richard Nixon's war on drugs was a war on the African-American community. But in that lecture, preparing for that lecture, I studied the history of the war on drugs going back to like 1875, because all these drugs were legal as long as white people were using them. Opium, cannabis, things like this. It was all legal as long as cocaine became illegal in 1914. And the New York Times had an article in 1914 called Negro Cocaine Fiends have now turned to sniffing because of prohibition. Okay. And this is a big article from the New York Times in 1914, February 8th, 1914. And this article dealt with fears that white people had. And they were asking the question, do police now need to carry a 45 caliber handgun because a 38 is not powerful enough to kill a Negro high on cocaine? And it dealt with the fears that black men would have superhuman strength when they're high on cocaine and will rape white women. This was a huge article from the New York Times, okay? February 8th, 1914. And when I was doing my research for my lecture dealing with the history of Richard Nixon's war on drugs, I came across all this information, and then I read the article. I had to get a digital subscription to the New York Times. That's why I have a digital subscription today. I had to get a digital subscription to the New York Times to be able to go into their archives and read that article, because it was over 100 years old. So I had to pay to have access to it. Okay. And there have been articles. Okay, this is let's see here. This is, okay, it's giving me some type of access. Am I logged in? I'm going to show you this. This is a famous article. When you study the history of the war on drugs and the drug laws in this country, you'll come across this article. This one right here. New York Times. Negro cocaine fiends are a new Southern menace. Murder and insanity increasing among lower class blacks because they have taken to sniffing since deprived of whiskey by prohibition. So prohibition, alcohol is illegal. And they're saying that there's this fear, oh, black men are now using cocaine. They're going to have superhuman strength. We're not going to be, if they rape white women, we're not going to be able to stop them. Do police officers now need to carry 45 caliber handguns to stop a Negro high on cocaine? This is real history. This happened. Now, you know what happened exactly 1 year after this article came out? The movie The Birth of a Nation came out, February 8th, 1915. Exactly 1 year later, the movie The Birth of a Nation came out, which depicted all types of negative, derogatory, dehumanizing depictions of African Americans, and it showed black men trying to rape white virgins in the movie. And who was the hero of the movie The Birth of a Nation? The Ku Klux Klan. The Ku Klux Klan were the heroes, and they put down a rebellion of former Union Negro soldiers, because the movie The Birth of a Nation takes place during slavery, Civil War, and Reconstruction. Reconstruction is 1865 to 1877. At the end of the movie, the Ku Klux Klan rises up to put down this rebellion of these former Union Negro soldiers, and it flashes on the screen. It says, this is the birth of a nation. Okay, that movie rejuvenated the Ku Klux Klan. If you study the history of this, and I have, that movie rejuvenated the Ku Klux Klan, which had largely died out by 1915 because the Klan was founded December 24, 1865 in Pulaski, Tennessee. Okay, in the same month, late in the same month that the 13th Amendment was ratified, December 6, 1865, which legally ended slavery, and it was adopted December 18th, 1865. By 1915, the Klan was not powerful. They had largely died out. A lot of the early Klan members were dead. This movie rejuvenated the Klan so much so that in many newspapers, when they had articles advertising the movie The Birth of a Nation, the Ku Klux Klan would take out recruiting ads next to the ad advertising the movie. Let's go back to this article here from April 2016 that I dealt with on this show when it came out. And I talked about this also in my lecture dealing with the history of Richard Nixon's war on drugs. Now, Americans have been criminalizing psychoactive substances since San Francisco's anti-opium law of 1875, which targeted Chinese men because white people were afraid that Chinese men would seduce white women when these men are high on opium. Okay, but it was John Ehrlichman's boss, Richard Nixon, who declared the first war on drugs and set the country on the widely punitive and counterproductive path it still pursues. I tracked Ehrlichman, who had been Nixon's domestic policy advisor, to an engineering firm in Atlanta where he was working on minority recruitment. I barely recognized him. He was much heavier than he had been at the time of the Watergate scandal 2 decades earlier, and he wore a mountain man beard that extended to the middle of his chest. Okay, at the time I was writing a book, I was writing a book about the politics of drug prohibition. I started to ask John Ehrlichman a series of earnest, wonky questions that he impatiently waved away. He said, quote, "You want to know what this was really about?" he asked. Okay. He said, quote, "The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people. The anti-war left and black people." He said, "You understand what I'm saying?" He said, "We knew we couldn't make it legal we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war, the Vietnam War, either against the war or to be black. But by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana, okay, a less powerful drug, and associate African Americans with heroin, a more addictive drug, a more powerful drug, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders. We could raid their homes. We could break up their meetings and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. We'll deal with this on the other side of the break. Listen to the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Stand by. All right. Back from break in 4 minutes. Stand by. Okay, if you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network. We definitely need your support. $ the AHN show through Cash App. $ the AHN show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. This helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, pay some of the bills. Also, you can register for the online history classes that I teach on Saturdays, on Wednesdays and Thursdays. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. And from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. Back from break in 3 minutes. Okay, you can register for our online classes here on the, we have the information right on the homepage of our website, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Our next class is going to, we have classes Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Back from break in 1 minute. Back from break in 1 minute.
Opinions and the facts.
I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We deal with current events and history and much, much more. We're going to give you an update on what's going on. This is about self-preservation. We have to extinguish the fire of white supremacy to electrify consequences.
Catch it all right here on an AM Superstation.
Welcome back to the African History Network show. Okay, we left off here. So we were talking about this article, Legalize It All. This dealt with the origins of the war on drugs, dealing with the Richard Nixon administration. Okay, and Dan Baum, this is an article from April 2016 from Harper's Magazine. This was their cover story. All the news outlets had articles dealing with this. Okay, April 2016. Okay, I want to go back to the clip from. I want to go back to the clip from the Beat with Ari Melber. We're going to pick this up at the 1 minute mark. Giovanni, let's go back to this clip, please.
Pot is so bad. Why do so many wealthy people and white people get away with using it without ever having any criminal legal problems, while poor and minorities are charged at higher rates? Well, those are just some questions. There are actually answers. We are also, when possible, in the answers business here in the news. But the answers are disturbing. Consider that it was the disgraced Watergate president, Richard Nixon, who first led the pot crackdown in this country, and for suspicious reasons. Nixon's top aide later admitted their war on drugs targeted Nixon's two political enemies, quote, the anti-war left and black people. His words. He went on to explain, we knew we couldn't make it illegal to be against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin and criminalizing both heavily, Nixon's aide explained they could disrupt those communities, arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, vilify them night after night on the evening news. If you're watching on the East Coast, it's the early evening. Hi there, this is the evening news. We're not falling in that trap. We're going to follow the facts. It is, of course, illegal for the government to abuse criminal laws to target politicians' opponents or legislate based on their lies. And that's what that Nixon drug war was about. That same aide admitted after the fact. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. Yeah, that's history, but it's also news tonight. It was Nixon who created the DEA. It was Nixon who put marijuana among the most dangerous drugs, that same Schedule 1 list that Biden is now asking be reconsidered by the federal government. And some policies age poorly as we learn more or as times change. But other policies were broken from the start, and that is the war on drugs, according to its own creators, like the Nixon aide I just quoted you. Then later administrations, first led by Republicans, pushed even farther. Reagan made the drug war a centerpiece of his domestic policy and his sort of American vision. And crime did rise in the 80s, and there was violence linked to hard drugs and gangs. Let's be clear about that legal history. But the effort to equate pot to heroin and push jail as the answer to all drug and health problems did not work. And then you had the moderate Democrats like Bill Clinton, who started to echo part of that initially conservative Nixon-Reagan agenda. Some of the most controversial, harsh laws on the books today were pushed not only by Nixon initially, as I showed you, but by then Judiciary Chairman Biden and then President Clinton, who you know are both Democrats. So now you have Washington, D.C. considering more reforms. And as a matter of the way seniority works and politics work, you have politicians who are now in their 70s or even 80s who are considering dismantling part of the laws that they themselves passed when they were in their 40s and 50s. So it is worth knowing tonight how we got here.
Governor Whitmer made historic investments in our public schools.
Okay, is that the end of the clip? All right.
No, an ad just pop up.
All right. Okay. We'll go back to that clip here in just a minute.
America's public enemy number.
Let's go back to the clip.
Number one in the United States is drug abuse. In order to fight and defeat this enemy, it is necessary to wage a new all-out offensive.
Marijuana, pot, grass, whatever you want to call it, is probably the most dangerous drug in the United States.
All of us agree that the greatest domestic threat facing our nation today is drugs.
It's time to take our communities back from the drug traffickers and the drug abusers.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it. And didn't inhale and never tried it again.
Good people don't smoke marijuana.
All right. Marijuana is not factually the most dangerous drug today, nor was it when Ronald Reagan said that, nor was it when Bill Clinton kept echoing Republican talking points about it. Now, people are allowed to change their minds. That's actually often a good thing. Many people say it's an essential quality for long-term leadership. And Biden's move, which clears all federal charges for pot possession since the 70s, does show a change of position. It dismantles part of this bipartisan drug war that he waged. But this is not over. That is what I want everyone to understand tonight. This war continues at the state level, where, again, in both parties, governors are overseeing prisons with not 5 or 10 or 15,000, no, 40,000 people still in prison right now for these marijuana-related convictions. And so while it's tempting to view this as some sort of problem that's automatically fading into the past, that view also depends on where you sit and on whether you are forced by police and prosecutors and judges to think about this, whether you are separated from your family for the pot use you may have practiced or practiced a long time ago,
okay,
or whether
pause right
you
there.
are walking around.
Pause right there. All right. I want to go to this article here for the sake of time. This is from timeline.com. I want to go back to this piece here. This deals with Harry J. Anslinger, how a racist hate monger masterminded America's war on drugs. And this deals with why marijuana was made illegal going back to 1937. Okay, so if we go back to this piece here, let me see. I want to, okay, right here. With this unforgiving mentality, Harry J. Anslinger ruled over the Federal Narcotics Bureau, which was a precursor to the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency. It was Richard Nixon who created the DEA. Anslinger ruled over this for more than 3 decades. Now, if you saw the movie on Hulu, I think it was the U.S. versus Billie Holiday or something like that, Harry J. Anslinger is portrayed in there because Harry J. Anslinger helped bring down Billie Holiday. Okay. Dealing with her drug usage, things like this. That was Harry J. Anslinger behind that. Now, as John C. McWilliams explained in his book about Anslinger, The Protector, called The Protectors, Anslinger was the Federal Bureau. Anslinger was the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. During this time, he implemented stringent drug laws and unreasonably long prison sentences that would give rise to America's prison industrial complex. Because of Anslinger, millions of lives were swept up in the drug war's dragnet if they weren't outright ended. But Anslinger wasn't so much a war on drugs as it was a war on culture. Okay, Anslinger's wasn't so much a war on drugs as it was a war on culture, an attempt to squelch the racial freedom of the jazz age for people of color. Harry J. Anslinger was a xenophobe. He was a white supremacist, racist. He was a xenophobe with no capacity for intellectual nuance, and his racist views informed his work to devastating effect. But he couldn't have done it nor reigned as long as he did without a cast of complicit politicians who shared his bigoted vision for what America should be. Okay, for what America should be. Now, here is a picture of Louis Armstrong performing at Brooklyn College in 1941. You see the white people all around, especially the white women, right? Okay, and this was a fear that many white people had, that you were going to have race mixing because of jazz music. Okay, if we look at this here, I want to skip ahead some. Okay, from the beginning, Anslinger conflated drug use, race, and music. From the beginning, Harry J. Anslinger conflated drug use, race, and music. Quote, reefer makes darkies think they're good as white men. Reefer makes darkies think they're as good as white men, he was quoted as saying. Quote, there are 100,000 total marijuana smokers in the U.S., and most are Negroes, Hispanics, Filipinos, and entertainers. We'll pick this up on the other side of the break. You listen to the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Stand by. All right. Here's our Cash App information here right on the homepage of our website. Right on the homepage of our website, TheAHNShow.com. Okay, $ the AHN show, SHOW. When you go to it, it says Michael and shows my picture there. These other ones here and other ones like it are fake African History Network Cash App accounts. Click right here on the link, and it click right there on the link, and it okay. What the hell is this doing? Why is it giving this error? I don't know why it's giving this error, but it's $ the AHN show through Cash App. We posted the link here. I'm not sure why it's giving the error. I have to contact Cash App. I'm not sure why it's giving the error. You can support us also through PayPal. paypal.me/TheAHNShow. We have the information on the homepage of our website. Okay. Who still needs to register for the online classes that I teach on Wednesday? Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. After breaking 1 minute. Okay, here's the information to register for the online classes. All right, welcome back to the African History Network show. Okay, be sure to register for the online classes that I teach on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. On Wednesdays, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This ancient Kemet. Hold on just a second. All right, welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation, the Future Radio. Okay, be sure to visit our website, TheAHNShow.com, TheAHNShow.com. You can register for the online classes I teach on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. On Wednesdays is Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. The classes don't sell $80 regularly, $130. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. You don't have to be present in class. A year from now, 2 years from now, you can go back and watch the entire course. It'll be archived. On Tuesdays, I teach from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. The class is the same price, same format. Click on register here to register for the classes. And as soon as you register, there's archive content you can start watching. We have a bundle pack. You can register for both courses for only $130. That's over $300 value. Click here for register here for that. And if you've taken any of my online classes in the past, I've been teaching the online classes since 2017. Email us through the website or email us at TheAHNShow@theAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You'll get 50% off. All right. Let's go back to this piece here. And let's see. And somebody asked a question, are we streaming on radio? Yes, we are. This is a radio show on terrestrial radio, 9:10 a.m. Superstation WFDF here in Detroit. I'm just broadcasting from home because I used to be in the studio before COVID, and they had us broadcasting from home, and they said we could still broadcast from home, so that's what I'm doing. All right. Let's go back to this piece here on Harry J. Anslinger. You can also listen to 9:10 a.m. The Superstation WFDF. Download the iHeartRadio app or the TuneIn Radio app on your smartphone. You can listen to shows live there. Okay, from the beginning, Anslinger conflated drug use, race, and music. Okay, he said there are 100,000 total marijuana smokers in the U.S., and most are Negroes, Hispanics, Filipinos, and entertainers. Their satanic music, jazz, and swing music result from marijuana use. He said this marijuana use causes white women to seek sexual relations with Negroes, entertainers, and any others. This marijuana causes white women to seek sexual relations with Negroes, entertainers, and any others. Now, he testified to this in Congress. Okay? He testified to this in Congress. Now, Anslinger said jazz was the opposite of everything, as Harry writes, quote, jazz was the opposite of everything Harry Anslinger believed in. It is improvised, relaxed, free form. It follows its own rhythm. Worst of all, it is a mongrel music made up of European, Caribbean, and African echoes, all mating on American shores, To Anslinger, this was musical anarchy and evidence of a recurrence of the primitive impulses that lurk in Black people, lurk in African Americans. Okay. Evidence of a recurrence of the primitive impulses that lurk in African Americans waiting to emerge. It sounded, his internal memo said, quote, like the jungles in the dead of night, Now, when word got around in the late 1930s that Harry J. Anslinger referred to Black people as a ginger-colored N-word, Pennsylvania Senator Joseph Gurry called for Anslinger to be fired, but these calls were dismissed, likely because of his influential Washington network. In 1937, Anslinger wrote an article for the Scourge about the scourge of weed, titled "Marijuana Assassin of Youth," which appeared in the American magazine. He began with the common white supremacist trope, trading on the idea that white women and children were in danger. Quote, not long ago, the body of a young girl lay crushed on the sidewalk after a plunge from a Chicago apartment window. Everyone called it suicide, but actually it was murder. The killer was a narcotic known as marijuana, and today and to history as hashish. End quote. He also wrote of a marijuana addict hung from the criminal assault of a 10-year-old girl. All right. Okay, so read the rest of this article here. Harry J. Anslinger was a very sick person. All right. Now, Anslinger's appeal to fear appeared to be working. Articles proclaiming the dangers of marijuana ran in papers all across the country. So they used mass media to create this hysteria and scare people. Okay. It was during this time that anti-drug zealots swapped the term cannabis for marijuana, marihuana, or the common spelling of marijuana with a J, hoping that the Spanish word marijuana would conjure up anti-Mexican sentiment, because this is during the 1930s, during the Great Depression, at a time when the U.S. was deporting Mexican Americans to Mexico, and the U.S. starting with Herbert Hoover, who became president in 1928, continuing with Franklin Roosevelt. The U.S. is going to deport up to 1.8 million Mexicans, people of Mexican ancestry, back to Mexico. 60% of them were said to be here legally. About 60% of them were said to be here legally. Okay. Now, so you had this anti-Mexican sentiment, and that builds upon the anti-Mexican sentiment going back to the Mexican-American War of 1848 to 1846 to 1848. Now, newspapers, whether they believed it or not, went along for the ride, running headlines like, quote, murders due to killer drug marijuana sweeping the United States. Now, Anslinger's efforts culminated in the passage of the Marijuana Tax Act in 1937, which effectively made marijuana illegal. This is why marijuana was made illegal. It wasn't because it caused brain damage, nothing like this. It's largely because of this white supremacist named Harry J. Anslinger, and also America's hatred for Mexicans, that then gets African Americans caught up in it, because he was attacking jazz music, and African Americans get caught up in this. And today, after the Richard Nixon declaring his war on drugs in 1971, and then we see these things intensify in 94 with the crime bill. All right, almost African Americans are almost 4 times as likely to be arrested for marijuana possession, even though white people and African Americans have basically the same drug usage rates. Okay, those watching on Facebook and YouTube, keep watching. We're going to keep going for a couple more minutes here, and I'll do some broadcasts during the week dealing with this as well. Visit our website, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you next week. Peace. Okay, stand by. All right. Okay. Okay, then this other piece here from CBS News. CBS News has a good article dealing with Anslinger. And okay, now there's a piece from The Atlantic. And I talked about this piece in my lecture dealing with Richard Nixon's war on drugs. There's a piece from The Atlantic called TheAtlantic.com, How Neuroscience Reinforces Racist Drug Policy. This article is from 2014. Okay, how neuroscience reinforces racist drug policy. And if we look at this here quickly, there's just a specific section that I want to focus on. Okay, this piece here. Just a second. Okay, now this article is from June 12th, 2014 from TheAtlantic.com. and it deals with some of the history of why marijuana was made illegal also. I want to go to this part here. Neuroscience participates in a sophisticated form of revisionist history. Okay, so they show this here dealing with how in the 1800s they were trying to make the argument for the inferiority of African Americans based upon the structure of our cranium and the structure of European of white people's craniums of their skulls. Let's see here. Where is this? Hold on, let me find this part here. Okay, neuroscience is a sophisticated form of revisionist history. It turns public discourse away from the fact that marijuana is not illegal because it was discovered to cause brain damage. Okay, marijuana is not illegal because it was discovered to cause brain damage, but because of an early 20th century fear-mongering campaign to associate it with Mexican immigrant workers. This is why marijuana was made illegal. And because of racism targeting African Americans as well. The campaign, infamously led by the first director of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, Harry J. Anslinger, culminated in the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937, federal legislation that prohibitively taxed cannabis and hemp. Anslinger had also become particularly adept at using public media to propagandize the evils of marijuana. His essay, Marijuana Assassin of Youth, was published in the American Magazine, the same year, 1937. In it, Anslinger offered panic-inducing musings like how many murders, suicides, robberies, criminal assaults, holdups, burglaries, and deeds of maniacal insanity it causes each year, especially among the young, can only be conjectured. No one knows when he places a marijuana cigarette to his lips whether he will become a joyous reveler in a musical heaven, a mad insensate, a calm philosopher, or a murderer. Now, sensationalism like this was specifically aimed at a white readership that might worry about such an unfathomably dangerous ethnic drug getting into the hands of children. Anslinger's congressional testimony directly betrayed his racist motivations to enact federal legislation against marijuana. Quote, this is what he said to Congress. He testified in front of Congress. He said there are 100,000 total marijuana smokers in the U.S., and most are Negroes, Hispanics, Filipinos, and entertainers. Their satanic music, jazz, and swing result from marijuana usage. This marijuana causes white women to seek sexual relations with Negroes, entertainers, and others. This is what he testified to in front of Congress. Marijuana is a mongrel word that has crept into this country over the Mexican border and has no general meaning except as it relates to the use of cannabis preparations for smoking. Even the word marijuana, a Mexican Spanish word, was a strategic choice on Anslinger's part, because before this it was called cannabis. When white people were using it, it was called cannabis. The word marijuana recast the word cannabis, which was already in the lexicon of physicians who for decades had been using its tinctures, tinctures, to treat pain and incontinence as a specifically ethnic plant. The American Medical Association, the AMA, which opposed the proposed marijuana prohibition tax in 1937, the AMA opposed this tax, felt blindsided and duped by the 1937 congressional hearings. The American Medical Association's legal representative at the hearings, Dr. William Woodward, decried the language game in particular. He said, quote, the term marijuana is a mongrel word that has crept into this country over the Mexican border and has no general meaning except as it relates to the use of cannabis preparations for smoking. It is not recognized in medicine. The term marijuana is not recognized in medicine, he was saying. And I might say that this is hardly recognized even in the Treasury Department, end quote. Okay, now read the rest of this article here. There's a piece from CBS News that I want to get to quickly. And the name of this article from TheATLANTIC.com is called How Neuroscience Reinforces Racist Drug Policy. Okay, and this article is from 2014, June 12, 2014. Because when I did my lecture dealing with the history of Richard Nixon's war on drugs, this was one of my sources that I cited. Now, there was a good article called from November 17th, 2016 from CBS News called "The Man Behind the Marijuana Ban for All the Wrong Reasons." The man behind the marijuana ban, BAN, for all the wrong reasons. And it talks about Anslinger. This is another example of how politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, palm resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement, and how dangerous it is to have the wrong people in office. Okay, how dangerous it is to have the wrong people in office. There's a section here that I want to focus on. The man behind the marijuana ban for all the wrong reasons. Okay, can I close out this ad? Just a second here. All right, it says if you look for the roots of America's ban on cannabis, you'll find nearly all roads lead to a man named Harry J. Anslinger. If you look for the roots of America's ban on cannabis, you'll find nearly all roads lead to a man named Harry J. Anslinger. Now, he was the first commissioner of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, which laid the groundwork for the modern day DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency, and the first architect of the war on drugs. Anslinger was appointed in 1930, just as the prohibition of alcohol was beginning to crumble. Prohibition was finally repealed in 1933 and he remained in power for 32 years. Early on, he was on record essentially saying cannabis use was no big deal. He called the idea that it made people mad or violent an absurd fallacy. But when Anslinger was put in charge of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, he changed his position entirely. Here's a picture of a younger Anslinger with hair. Johann Hari, who wrote the book Chasing the Scream, the first and last days of the war on drugs, said that, quote, from the moment he took charge of the Bureau, Harry J. Anslinger was aware of the weakness of his new position. A war on narcotics alone, cocaine, so cocaine and heroin were outlawed in 1914, okay? So a war on narcotics alone was not enough. And cocaine and heroin are already illegal. Quote, they were used only by a tiny minority, and you could not keep an entire department alive on such small crumbs. So Anslinger needed more. The Federal Bureau of Narcotics, you couldn't keep it alive on just such small crumbs, and heroin and cocaine are already illegal. Consequently, Anslinger made it his mission to rid the U.S. of all drugs, including cannabis. His influence played a major role in the introduction and passage of the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937, which outlawed possessing or selling marijuana. Now, this is a specific part that I want to look at here. Okay. Fueled by a handful of 1920s newspaper stories about crazed or violent episodes after marijuana usage, Anslinger first claimed that the drug could cause psychosis and eventually insanity. He first claimed that the drug could cause psychosis and eventually insanity. In a radio address, he stated, young people are, quote, slaves to this narcotic, continuing addiction until they deteriorate mentally, become insane, turn to violent crime and murder, end quote. In particular, Anslinger latched on to the story of a young man named Victor Licata, 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 who had hacked his family to death with an axe, supposedly while high on cannabis. It was discovered many years later, however, that Victor Licata had a history of mental illness in his family, and there was no proof he ever used the drug cannabis. So here you have Anslinger latching onto the story that's in the news, and the foundation of the story is false. Okay, like Victor Licata had a history of mental illness, but that wasn't made public when these articles are being pushed, when these articles are in the media. And there was also no evidence that he used cannabis. Now, the problem was there was little scientific evidence that supported Harry J. Anslinger's claims. Anslinger contacted 30 scientists. Now, pay attention to this. Anslinger contacted 30 scientists, according to Johann Hari in his book. And 29 of those scientists told Anslinger that cannabis was not a dangerous drug, but it was the theory of the single expert who agreed with Anslinger that he presented to the public. The other 29 doctors, he didn't present what they said, who said cannabis was not dangerous. He goes with the one quack who agreed with Anslinger, and that's what Anslinger presents to the public. Cannabis was an evil that should be banned, and the press ran with this sensationalized version of the story. This is Anslinger with no hair. The second component to Anslinger's strategy was racial. He claimed that Black people and Latinos were the primary users of marijuana, and it made them forget their place. It made them forget their place in the fabric of American society. Oh, you mean it made them uppity Negroes? Hard to control. They don't know their place. What they want equality now. They're uppity Negroes. They're high on marijuana. They want equality. They want equal rights. He even went so far as to argue that jazz musicians were creating satanic music, all thanks to the influence of pot. This obsession eventually led to a sort of witch hunt against the legendary singer Billie Holiday, who struggled with heroin addiction. Billie Holiday lost her license to perform in New York cabarets and continued to be dogged by law enforcement until her death. Johann Hari told CBS News, quote, "The insanity of the racism is a thing to behold when you go into his archives, Anslinger's archives. He claims that cannabis promotes interracial mixing and interracial relationships." This is what happens when you have the wrong people in power. The word marijuana itself was part of this approach. What was commonly known as cannabis until the early 1900s was instead called marijuana, a Spanish word more likely to be associated with Mexicans. Johann Hari says, quote, "He was able to do this because he was tapping into very deep anxieties in the culture that were not to do with drugs." You're talking about white culture. That's what you're talking about. And the fears of white people of these African Americans and Latinos intermixing, having sex with white women and producing mixed race children. Quote, "He was able to do this because he was tapping into very deep anxieties in the culture that were not to do with drugs and attaching them to this drug. Essentially, in 1930s America, it was not hard to use racist rhetoric to associate the supposed harms of cannabis with minorities and immigrants. So as the nationwide attitude towards cannabis began to fall in line with Anslinger's views, he testified before Congress in hearings for the Marijuana Tax Act. His testimony centered around the ideas that he had been pushing all along, including a provocative letter from a local newspaper editor in Colorado saying, quote, "I wish I could show you what a small marijuana cigarette can do to one of our degenerate Spanish-speaking residents," end quote. One of our degenerate Spanish-speaking residents. All these years later, many of the threads in Anslinger's arguments are still present in the American conversation about legalizing marijuana. The act was passed in 1937, and the rest, they say, is history. Okay, so check out this article. It's written by Sydney Adams for CBS News. Sydney, she's an African-American woman, Sydney Adams for CBS News. The man behind the marijuana ban for all the wrong reasons. This is from November 17th, 2016. Okay, so check out that article. I want to switch gears very quickly here, and we're out of time, so I'm just going to run this one story dealing with Herschel Walker. The rest of the stuff we have to get to next week or sometime during the week. But this week has not been a good week for Herschel Walker. And the story from the Daily Beast came out dealing with pro-life Herschel Walker paid girlfriend's abortion, Georgia Senate. And then Friday, the story from the New York Times came out. Herschel Walker urged woman to have a second abortion, she says. I want to go to this story here because the writer of this article from the New York Times, Maya King, was interviewed on MSNBC. So we're going to go to, we're going to cue this up here. A second, let me go to this and let's see. This is the article here from the Daily Beast. Let's see. Okay, this is from Alex Wagner's show, Alex Wagner Tonight, on MSNBC. Let's go to this clip.
Okay, and breaking just literally minutes ago, Herschel Walker has now acknowledged for the first time the identity of the woman who claims he paid for her to have an abortion 13 years ago. But he is also claiming to NBC's Mark Caputo that today was the first time the woman ever mentioned to him, to Herschel Walker, that she had had an abortion. Okay, so Herschel Walker is saying this is the first time he has heard about this abortion. He is confirming the identity of the woman, but he is saying he had no knowledge that she sought to terminate the pregnancy. Joining us now is the author of the initial New York Times story, Maya King. She is a politics reporter who covers the South for the paper. And oh, what a time it is to be a reporter covering the Walker campaign. Maya, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So let me just get your reaction to our NBC reporting here. Herschel Walker is confirming that he knows this woman, but is essentially saying, I had no idea that she ever had an abortion, undermining the story and potential evidence that the woman has presented thus far, and also in direct opposition to your reporting, which is that Herschel Walker asked the woman not only to get one abortion, but two abortions. What is your reaction to these latest claims from Herschel Walker himself?
Well, he's also undermining his claims even from Monday that he never knew this woman, that he never financed an abortion, that this was not something that he was totally aware of. And we've seen really from Monday until just moments ago, the ways that this story has unraveled, but also the ways that Walker has begun to tell the truth of the situation. Of course, our reporting, documents provided to us at the New York Times and conversations with this woman show that Mr. Walker was very aware exactly of what the circumstances were surrounding her decision to have an abortion. In fact, that it was a decision that both of them made together. And, you know, this is obviously a very private matter between the two of them. It's not something you normally see covering a campaign. But, you know, I want to underline the fact that what matters here is the hypocrisy in the situation. The fact that Walker has said repeatedly that he is pro-life, that he is against abortion, that he endorses an abortion ban with no exceptions, that he also has railed against what he says is a trend of absentee fathers in Black households. And now reporting over several weeks, and really just this week alone, shows one, that he has indeed had an abortion, or at least financed women in his life to have an abortion, and two, that he has not exactly been an active father in the life of at least one of his children.
Looking for the best price on it?
All right, stand by. Hold on. Okay. And if we look at this piece here from New York Times, it says a woman who has said Herschel Walker, the Republican Senate nominee in Georgia, paid for her abortion in 2009, told the New York Times that he urged her to terminate a second pregnancy 2 years later. He urged her to terminate a second pregnancy 2 years later. They ended their relationship after she refused. In a series of interviews, the woman said Mr. Walker had barely been involved in their now 10-year-old son's life, offering little more than court-ordered child support and occasional gifts. The woman disclosed the new details about her relationship with Herschel Walker, who has anchored his campaign on an appeal to social conservatives as an unwavering opponent of abortion, even in cases of rape and incest. After the former football star publicly denied that he knew her, he called her, quote unquote, some alleged woman in a radio interview on Thursday, October 6th. Now, the New York Times is withholding the name of the woman who insisted on anonymity to protect her son. In the interview, she described the frustration of watching Republicans rally around Herschel Walker, dismiss her account, and bathe him in prayer and praise, calling him a good man. She said she wanted Georgia voters to know what kind of man Herschel Walker was to her. She said, quote, as a father, he's done nothing. He's done exactly what the courts say, and that's it. She said he has to be held responsible just like the rest of us. And if you're going to run for office, you need to own your life. If you're going to run for office, you need to own your life. Now, the interviews and documents provided to the New York Times together corroborate and expand upon an account about her abortion first published on Monday in the Daily Beast. The New York Times also independently confirmed details with custody records filed in family court in New York and interviewed a friend of the woman to whom she had described the abortion and her eventual breakup with Herschel Walker as those events occurred. Now, Walker's campaign declined to comment about the woman's account. The woman reaffirmed the key details of her account. She and Herschel Walker conceived a child in 2009 and decided not to continue the pregnancy. Herschel Walker was not married at the time. She provided the New York Times a $575 receipt. She was given after paying for the procedure at an Atlanta women's clinic, and a deposit slip showing a copy of a $700 check that she said Herschel Walker gave her as reimbursement. She also shared a get well card with a handwritten message, quote, "Pray you are feeling better," and it was simply signed H. Now, Herschel Walker repeatedly denied her account, calling it a flat out lie and the work of Democrats and the hostile news media. He has disputed that he signed the card. He told Fox News on Monday that he sends money to a lot of people. But we're not talking about the money you sent to a lot of people, Herschel. We're talking about the $700, that $700 check dated September 17th, 2009. Not all the other $700 checks you sent to people. The one dated September 17th, 2009. You do realize, Herschel, you do realize that a computer is like a time machine. You can log into your bank account through your computer. You can go back in time to see the transaction from your bank account from September 17, 2009, or right around that time, for $700. And then you can call your bank and ask them to send you a copy of the canceled check from September 17, 2009. When you get the copy of the canceled check, it'll show who you wrote the check to. And she says that you all conceived this child that was aborted in 2009. Well, Herschel, how many women did you get pregnant in 2009? You should be able to narrow this down pretty easy. This don't take a genius to figure this stuff out now. Come on, okay? How many women did you get pregnant in 2009? Did you lose track? This is pretty simple. And I saw like some interviews he did, the excerpts of interviews that he did on Fox News. Nobody asked this question. Well, Herschel, how many women did you get pregnant in 2009? Nobody asked the question, Herschel, did you check your bank records for this check? The woman has receipts. She literally has receipts. Did you check your bank records? It don't take a genius to figure this out. So the piece, there was this article that came out from there was this article that came out Friday from NBC News. And this article on Friday, I posted on our fan page, the African History Network. This article on Friday is really funny, and more information comes out each day, basically showing that Herschel Walker's lying. And there's going to be more coming out. This is not it, okay? So this article came out on Friday. Texts show family strife between Herschel Walker's wife. Okay, let me refresh the screen. This is acting damn. Stand by. Okay, we're back. Okay, so this article came out Friday, NBC News. Texts show family strife between Herschel Walker's wife and woman who alleged he paid for her abortion. Herschel Walker, in an interview with NBC News, okay, told NBC News, "I'm not saying she did or didn't have one," referring to an abortion. He said, I'm saying I don't know anything about that. I don't know. So now you know who the woman is, but you're saying this is the first you heard about her having an abortion. Did you check your bank records, Herschel, to track down that $700 check? Because this is pretty simple. Okay, so read this article here. In a brief interview with NBC News, Herschel Walker said this was also the first time. He said this was also the first time the woman who is the mother of one of his 4 children that we know of mentioned to him or his wife that she had an abortion. So now you know who the woman is. She's the mother of one of your 4 children. So now you know who the woman is, but this is the first time she mentioned an abortion. So he still hasn't accounted for the $700 check. Quote, did you know Herschel paid for my abortion the first time, or that he told me it wasn't the right time to have her current child? The woman wrote in a 9:54 a.m. text message sent Friday to Herschel Walker's wife, Julie Walker, who initiated the conversation. So Herschel Walker's wife initiated the conversation with the woman who's the mother of one of his other children. He literally has baby mama drama. I mean, he literally has baby mama drama. In response, Julie Walker acknowledged that she had tried to be a mediator between Herschel Walker and the woman, who seldom corresponded directly with her son's father. Quote, the message makes me incredibly sad. I have continually tried to bridge a better relationship between you and Herschel, putting the child first. Julie Walker wrote to the woman. Herschel's wife, Julie Walker, wrote to the woman, who did not return messages to NBC News requesting comment. The Walker campaign provided copies of the text message exchange to NBC News hours before the New York Times published an interview with the woman who alleged that Walker had paid for the 2009 abortion and tried to pressure her to abort their young son. So she's saying he pressured her to get 2 abortions. Okay, NBC News withholding the woman's and child's name to protect their identities. And then they have text messages here also. He literally has baby mama drama. So read the rest of this article here from NBC News. Texts show family strife between Herschel Walker's wife and woman who alleged he paid for her abortion. Okay, so you got that as well. And then this article here, there's a piece from NBC News, from MSNBC also. And they talked about this article from Politico.com. Walker team knew of an abortion allegation months before it surfaced. Walker's team knew of an abortion allegation months before it surfaced. Quote, the reaction was not, they're not going to say that because it never happened, end quote. It was like everything else. People aren't going to find out. So his team knew. Now, in the clip from you know what? I'll play the clip because it's only about 2 minutes. This is this clip here. I think this is the one that deals with the Jedi mind trick. Let me cue this up. This one is Not Herschel Walker doubles down. This is, I think this is this one here. Herschel Walker trying Jedi mind trick to deny story he paid for abortion, says reporter. Now, this is from October 6th. This is from, this clip is from Thursday, October 6th. This is before the story from the New York Times comes out on Friday, October 7th. Let me cue this. Let me cue this one up, because what they're saying in this segment, what they're saying in this segment is that Walker's team, his campaign, knew about another abortion allegation, which is different than this one that surfaced. Let's go to this clip here.
Yamiche talked about this drip that's coming out in large part due to you and your publications reporting. But there's another story in another outlet I want to ask you about. Politico reporting that Walker's team knew of an abortion allegation months before it surfaced. One Georgia GOP operative saying, quote, the reaction was not, they're not going to say that because it never happened. It was like everything else. People aren't going to find out. Why did they think this wouldn't come out?
I don't know. I would just like to call attention to one thing about that Politico article. I have no idea whether this is the same allegation. I don't think that it is. I spoke to the one on-record source that they have in that article, Liz Mayer, and she tweeted last night that she no longer thinks that it's the same allegation either. So that's the article's one on-record source. One of its off-record sources, or no, sorry, background sources, anonymous sources, says that, well, they can't be sure either. I would also like to call everyone's attention here really quickly to Herschel's denial of this story. He says that, nothing in the Daily Beast is true. He denies everything. That's not true. He actually confirmed two of my reports about his secret children. I put those reports out in June, just 2 days apart. He confirmed both of them. He does not think that everything the Daily Beast prints is a lie. He has not denied that. So he's doing some sort of Jedi mind trick where he says, I deny it on one hand, and then, he's also like asking, appealing to redemption, appealing to forgiveness and grace and all of that on the other. So which one is it? Can you hold those ideas in your head at the same time?
Okay, so you have now the reporter that you heard, that was Roger Sullenberger, and he wrote the two pieces for the Daily Beast, okay, that a lot of these other articles picked up. Pro-life Herschel Walker paid for girlfriend's abortion. This was the article that came out Monday, October 3rd, that sent shockwaves through Herschel Walker campaign. Okay, and then there was a follow-up article as well a few days later by Roger Sullenberger called "She Had an Abortion with Herschel Walker. She also had a child." She had an abortion with Herschel Walker. She also had a child with him. So you can read these articles here from the Daily Beast. Now, what's interesting is Herschel Walker said he was Monday when the story came out. He said he was going to sue the Daily Beast. He was going to file a lawsuit the next morning. Okay. He still has not filed a lawsuit against the Daily Beast. So what does that tell you? He still has not filed a lawsuit against the Daily Beast. So the other article came out. Other article came out October 5th. This one right here. She had an abortion with Herschel Walker. She also had a child with him. This was the follow-up article, so you can check those out. All right, look, we have to get out of here. Be sure to register for the online classes I teach on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. And from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. We have the information right on the homepage of our website, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. The sisters keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, pay some of the bills, etc. And yeah, we have the information right here. Go to our website, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have the information in the thread of this broadcast also. You can use this information with your children. I would say the content is PG-13. And scroll down. So we have the PayPal and Cash App information here. And you can click on the PayPal link also. It takes you to, click on the PayPal link and it takes you here. Okay, so you can support us through PayPal as well. So I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips. You don't have to buy any of the books to follow along in class. Click right here, register here to register. As soon as you register, there's content on demand that you can start watching, and you can join us in class live also. All right, we have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.